Well, everyone, the iPhone SE second generation is one of those phones that came out a couple of years ago back in 2020. And the thing to keep in mind with the iPhone SE 2020 model is that this is basically an iPhone that, is probably not the first one I'd recommend people to buy, but it is still an interesting device to take a look at. So let's go and see how the iPhone SE 2020 model holds up in 2025. Now, if you do want to pick up this iPhone or some other iPhones that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone SE 2, with this particular iPhone, when it first came out and even now, it still is giving you a 4.7-inch Retina IPS LCD display. So with this type of panel, like I said before, it is a pretty basic type of display. It was an older styling. You can see it's giving you very thick bezels on the top and the bottom. It's a smaller phone compared to a lot of phones nowadays. So it really isn't going to be giving you that great of an experience when compared to a lot of the competition. This thing is not an OLED display, no high refresh rate. It's just a 60 Hz IPS panel. So from that side, it definitely is kind of showing its age when it comes down to it. So personally for me, once again, if I'm looking at a device like this, it's definitely going to be a little outdated. But you have to keep in mind too, this was not supposed to be like a flagship of 2020. This was supposed to be like a pretty cheap device at that point. So you do have to kind of give this phone a little bit of like leeway because this wasn't supposed to be like the most expensive phone at the time. So from that side too, you kind of have to keep it in mind from like that particular side. You're still getting the home button on the front, Touch ID, which still looks pretty good. On the bottom, you're getting your Lightning port, which again is a very nice thing to have, but I will say USB-C is better. And on the back side, you're getting your standard MagSafe, not even MagSafe, just standard wireless charging here. So you're missing out on MagSafe here, which is interesting. No multiple camera setup, just a single camera setup on the back side. And overall, when you're looking at the outside of this phone, it still is a phone, it still functions, but it looks like a severely older device, right? This is a way older phone than you probably would have expected, and it definitely is showing its age. That is essentially the problem that we're kind of experiencing within this type of device, because it is kind of showing its age when it comes down to it. It's not the biggest problem in the world, but that is a very big thing you're going to end up experiencing here when it kind of comes down to it. So from that side too, I will say when it comes down to comparing it against other phones that have came out since then, the iPhone, even the iPhone 10, looks a little bit more modern than this device. This device is missing out on an OLED display, a high refresh panel, a brighter display. This thing's not that bright. It's missing out on USB-C. It's missing out on MagSafe. It's missing out on multiple cameras. There's a lot of things this particular phone is missing out on when compared to the competition nowadays. So I think that in and of itself is another very, very big thing to kind of keep in mind there as well. Now beyond that, another thing to keep in mind here is the price tag. Luckily for us, this phone doesn't really cost that much anymore. This phone costs about $120 in the used market. So that is kind of a big thing to kind of keep in mind here, right? This is not that super expensive phone anymore. It is a pretty cheap device when it comes down to it. And I think that is a really, really nice thing to kind of keep in mind here. So this particular device, this is basically, a pretty interesting type of price tag to pay because it's very cheap for what you're getting, right? It's very hard to kind of find an iPhone that's around $100 that performs at this level, but because of that performance, you're going to be missing out on some other areas of this device that might be better, So kind of keep that in mind too, and we'll take a look at that throughout the remainder of this video. Next up, we have the cameras. So this particular phone is going to be giving you a single 12 megapixel wide angle camera on the back, and then a 7 megapixel camera on the front. So here's the thing about this camera, right? This camera, like I said before, it's already showing its age, and it already showed its age even from before. So that is kind of the problem that you're kind of running into. This camera is like the same thing almost as like an iPhone 8, and it's just not that great of a camera experience on this type of phone. You are much better off, like I said before, getting a device that is going to be giving you a better experience here. And this one is going to be giving you somewhat of a limited type of experience when it comes down to it. So I do think at the end of the day, this is still like an interesting device from a camera perspective, but it's not really going to be that great of a camera, right? It's already kind of showing its age. 4K at 60 on the back is okay, but definitely with other types of devices, it is probably going to be giving you an overall better experience if you're looking at some other devices when it comes down to it. So I will tell you from the camera side, this camera definitely isn't not that bad, but there are definitely way better types of cameras that are out there that I would recommend buying over this thing. So from that side too, that kind of covers it up there as well. Now on top of that, when it comes down to software longevity, this device is still supported with software, and it's probably still going to be supported with software for the next probably year or so, right? Probably like 2 years. So this iPhone is probably going to last as long as the iPhone 11. This thing has the same chipset basically as the iPhone 11 as well. So from that side, you're really not going to be missing out on too much either. Like this device is still here. You're still going to be supported, and that's a really, really nice thing to kind of think about. With something like the iPhone 11, I feel like with this type of device, it's still here, and I feel like because of the way iOS 18 has kind of rocked, I feel like everyone kind of has the same type of experience with this device that, it's kind of like slower on most iOS 18 supported devices. It's going to be not as fast, things like that. Those are kind of the big those are kind of the big things that kind of end up happening here. But I would still say beyond that, this is still a very interesting device. I still think this device still does a pretty good job in a majority of things you throw at it from a software perspective. So you do have to give it a little bit of credit from that side as well. But one of the weirder areas of this type of device is probably the battery. The battery on this particular phone, it's a 1821 mAh battery. And this is, a significantly older type of battery. It looks like a less big of a size compared to the competition. So this is once again another one of those kind of big things to keep in mind there too, because this particular battery size is not going to be as great. So once again, that is going to be somewhat of a disadvantage with this type of phone, because it's just not going to be like that great of a performing device when it comes down to it from a battery life perspective. But on the flip side, the performance of this phone when it comes down to the actual chipset is actually pretty decent. It's much better than you'd probably think. This type of phone, right, is still giving you the Apple A13 Bionic chip inside of it, and it's still giving you 3 gigabytes of RAM. So this type of device, I think, is still giving you very, very good type of capability. And I think this is in and of itself a really nice thing to kind of think about here. So if you're going to go through and get a type of phone, I think this phone is still going to be giving you very good performance, very good capability. It's just a little bit slower and not as great because it is missing out on things like a gesture-based design. So because this thing has a home button, you're going to be missing out on that gesture-based design here. So that is kind of a big disadvantage here. Because if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, you're pretty much not going to, be going through and, you're not going to be able to swipe up and move around in that way. But I would still imagine that this type of phone is still going to be very good. It's still going to be very fast, and you probably won't be complaining about the sheer performance that much. But, it is a little bit of an older device, but it's not really that terrible. So overall, I would definitely tell you, the iPhone SE second generation, it's showing its age because of the design of this phone. I think when you look at the iPhone 11 Pro, which this phone kind of has almost the same internals as that phone doesn't nearly feel as old as the iPhone SE 2. This phone definitely feels like an old phone. It's an older device. It just doesn't do that good of a job when compared to the competition, but that's kind of what ends up happening. But I do think for around $100 phone, it is kind of surprising how good this thing is. But like I said, I think beyond that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go and buy a phone like this because it's already done getting soft and because it's already such an outdated looking phone when it comes down to it. I think an iPhone 11 Pro, an iPhone 12 Pro, or iPhone 13 Pro would be a way better phone than this thing. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.